My first experience with the supernatural was one of the most terrible life experiences I can remember. It happened when I was young and dumb and wanted to go out into the world and explore. While I was out of my home country of Canada, I witnessed a horror I'd soon hoped I'd forget. I'd gone on a trip with some of my buddies to Montana, just below my home province of Alberta. We were originally going to stay in Yellowstone National Park, but decided to head to Glacier National Park first. We were going to camp out at Yellowstone for a few days. We finally reached Glacier Park after a 6-hour drive and had just enough time to do a little hiking before going to our hotel in the nearby town to rest and move on towards Yellowstone. We had gotten to the park around 4:30 p.m. and decided it was a great idea to hike after dark. When I said great, I mean sarcastically. I'm not sure why we decided to go in the dark. So we hiked up the trail looking at the glorious views of rivers and waterfalls and all in the Avalanche Creek Trail. The light began to fade rather quickly. We were only about 2/3 of the way up and we'd hiked into the trail about 10 kilometers. To come back, it would take us about 2 hours to walk back down from that point. This is when everything hit the fan. Myself and my friends were all outdoorsmen and we loved to go hiking. We'd travel around the Rocky Mountains, but we were still inexperienced when it came to night hiking. Since the trail we were on wasn't as traveled at this part of the hike, it was hard to follow in the dark. Every now and then we would see a sign that notified us we were going in the right direction. At some point, maybe a third of the way down the mountain, we ended up going off trail, following a little rabbit trail, thinking we were still on the correct path. We began to figure out that we were definitely not going the right way. My friend checked his compass, showing we were heading deeper into the Rocky Mountain miles. We were going into the forest when all we wanted to do was get out of it. Then began the mass panic. My friends and I immediately turned around and began walking the way we came. The trail we were following didn't look the same as it had before, leading us to believe that we may have been even more lost than we already were. That's when we collectively noticed how quiet it had gotten. There were no insects, no birds, nothing. It was dead silence. I knew this was a bad sign, as I'm a hunter, and when it gets quiet like this, it means there's a large predator around and that it's hunting. We'd literally become prey to an unknown beast in the woods. We all began getting a sudden spike of anxiety when I let the guys know what was actually happening. That's when we heard a noise that brought terror, a guttural howl from up the mountain, and it was followed by even more. My heart went into my throat, and the terror I felt made me shake. Most of my friends did the same, but all of them, except 2, had already dipped and had began running in the direction the opposite of the howl. We'd all followed soon, and after running ourselves ragged, we looked behind and saw the eyes of something that was much larger than we anticipated. The eyes were at least 6 feet off the ground and moving towards us fast. We split up running in random directions, hoping to lose the beast. It was never going to happen. I could hear the breath of one of these things about 20 feet behind me and gaining. All of a sudden, my friend appeared from the trees to my right, and we ended up running together until I cut off from him. Hoping to escape, I know I left him to die that night, but it was a last-ditch effort that worked out in my advantage. I heard his screams from my left and ran as fast as I could away from them. Tears rolling down my face, I hear his screams for help and hear him shrieking in pain and know that nothing could have been done about it. I continued running down the mountain until I saw a familiar sight ahead of me. It was one of the trail signs showing how far you were on the trail. I stopped, checking where I was, and then started running again. I was hoping to get away from the creatures in the mountain. Another kilometer down the trail, I began hearing howls getting closer and closer yet again. This caused me to run as fast as I could. Looking ahead, I saw the sign saying parking lot and zoomed past it in panic. Looking for my keys in my pocket and scrambling towards the only vehicle still left in the lot, which was my car, I used my fob to unlock the car from a distance and run as hard as I could, slamming the side of my door and hopping in it. Starting the car, I looked out my window towards the trail and saw 2 pairs of eyes staring at me. Just out of the range of the lamppost, they stared at me before disappearing back into the brush as I drove away and never looked back. I arrived at the ranger station by the park entrance and ran inside looking disheveled and terrified. I began telling the ranger at the station what had happened. He looked at me with a sad face as if he knew that this would happen. He called up the search and rescue team to come in the morning to look for my friends. They were never found. This happened to me when I was 11 years old, and I'm now 13 and still remember it as clear as day. I basically lived in the middle of nowhere, so I didn't have many friends. There was this huge forest though, so I would often play there. One day, I went to go play, and it was almost around 6:30, so it was kind of dark. I lived in Wisconsin at the time. I went deep into the forest and everything was good until 7 p.m. rolled around. I was used to hearing weird noises in the woods, but nothing like this. I heard this awful scream, not human-like either. It was demonic, like it scared me. I was curious, so of course I went to go investigate it. I got around maybe half a mile in when I saw this non-human-like creature perched in a tree. Instead of running for my life, I froze in shock and fear, and before I knew it, that thing, that awfully smelly creature, was right behind me. I wanted to scream for help, but I didn't. I didn't know what that creature could do to me, so I stood there like a rock, hoping it would leave. It screamed again, but even worse than the first time, and I felt like I was gonna go deaf. Eventually, after minutes of it staring at me, it flew, and I mean flew, up to the tree. I stood there, looking at it, for what felt like hours. I wanted to pull my phone out and try to blind it with the flash so I could make a run for it. So that's what I did. Now, did I mention I was a little chubby for my age, so I couldn't run fast, and that caused the creature to jump and run after me. As it chased me through the woods, I felt the world spinning around me, and I screamed for help. The creature caught up with me eventually, and I felt like my life was over. I made a dash for the bushes, hoping to be able to hide in one, which I did. Now I waited for half an hour thinking he was gone, and I made a dash to the door, hoping it wasn't behind me. Instead, it was perched on the air conditioner. I told my parents that very night, and they called me crazy. but I know what I saw, and I'm never going in those woods again. Monsters are real, and I don't know what that creature was, but who knows what it would have done if it got its hands on me.